Okay, looks like we have folks with us. So I just want to say hello and welcome to First Financial Federal Credit Union's Wellness First Wednesday. We are so happy to be with you tonight, and we are so happy to have our guests with us. And we're from many different places together, but we certainly are a team together to talk about this most important um, topic we're going to talk about tonight. And our topic tonight is, pull my slide up, panel discussion, how to help children succeed in the digital environment. And we have just such a wealth of knowledge here today and experts that are going to share information with us. By the way, my name's Joan Pugh. I'm with First Financial Federal Credit Union. And again, we just thank everyone for being with us today. So let's go ahead and go around, if we could, to introduce ourselves. And we'll go ahead and start with Crystal. If you could just tell us a sentence or two about you. And again, welcome.
I think Crystal's muted.
Oh, she is. Excuse me.
Yeah.
There we go. So let's go ahead to Jennifer. We'll have you go first, Jennifer.
Sure. Hi, I'm Jennifer Kraft. I'm the Director for English Language Arts from Pre-K to 12 in Baltimore County Public Schools. And so I'm really happy to be here tonight and talk more about online learning during this time.
Thank you so much. And Crystal, go ahead and you can share a little bit about yourself, and I welcome you to our evening tonight.
Hi everyone. I'm Crystal, and I'm a Youth Services Specialist for Baltimore County Public Library. And I'm excited to share all of the great resources and programs that the library has to offer during this time.
Thank you so much, Crystal. And the library is such a great partner with us. We really appreciate you being here.
Yes, thank you.
Desirae? Thank you. Thank you. Desirae?
Good evening. My name is Desirae Brown. I'm a school counselor, and I currently work at Riverview Elementary School in Baltimore County. I'm just really happy to be able to offer a mental health lens and a social emotional lens for parents or guardians tonight.
Thank you so much. And Sue.
Hello, everyone. I'm Susan Hahn. I work out of the Office of Family and Community Engagement. And if you can't find us on the website, we fall under the Chief of Staff in the Department of Communications and Community Outreach.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and put us all up here right now and just say a couple of things to our attendees. First of all, I want to welcome you. I want to thank you for being with us tonight. Just to give you a little bit of housekeeping and expectation, we would ask that you keep your cameras off and keep you muted. We are recording this, so it will be available to you eventually on our YouTube channel. You're going to get tons and tons of information today. Please use the chat. The chat is there not only for you to receive information, but for you to share with us. So you're going to get lots of resources, links, lots of stuff in the chat, and then that is the place for you to ask your questions, because we do have time at the end for our experts to answer some of your specific questions. We are going to be gathering all those resources together, putting them into a PDF, and we will send them out to everybody tomorrow. So don't feel like you're going to have to furiously, I mean, you're going to get a lot of information. We're going to capture that for you and get it to you. And again, I just thank you for being here. So we're going to go ahead and get started, and I am going to turn myself off here and we'll get started. So again, let's go ahead and start by asking just a general question of all of you. So we're in a new year, thank goodness, right? And we hear everyone talk about what is your word? What's your word? What's the one word that you suggest to families, parents, students, as we focus on for the remainder of the school year? And let's go ahead and start with you, Desirae.
Okay, I would say grace. We're all doing the best that we can given the circumstances that we're currently in. So give yourself grace and offer grace to others as we continue to navigate our new normal.
Thank you so much. How about you, Jennifer?
In addition to grace, which is a great word, Desirae, I would say that presence. And so just really, moment by moment, just being really present where you are, not thinking about what happened in the past and not worrying about what's going to happen in the future, but just taking that moment that you're in and just centering yourself and getting what you can from that moment. And, the nice thing about living in each moment is that if that moment doesn't work out for you, there's another moment coming up. And so just letting go of some of the stuff that we don't need to hold on to.
That's great. I think that's really wise. How about you, Crystal?
I would say a good word to focus on is self-care. I think all of us are wearing multiple hats right now. Working your own job, kids going through school, your family. So it's really important to take care of yourself.
Excellent. And Sue?
I needed all those words. My word is kindness. I feel like with all that's going on, these difficult times in the world, that we all need to be a little kinder to each other in our community, in our homes, wherever we are in the neighborhood. If we bring kindness, that always helps.
Great. Thank you so much. So this question is for Jennifer, Desirae, and Crystal. How can parents/caregivers help get their students engaged in active learning, and how do you keep them engaged? And I'll let you jump in.
I can go first.
Great.
I have a couple of different responses for this question, so I apologize if anybody else came up with this too. But the first thing I would say is just to ensure that your child has a consistent bedtime routine. In bed by a certain time. I know it's really hard to do so because everybody's in the house, but getting them up in the morning at a certain time, just putting in that consistency and that regular schedule will really help them be able to stay engaged in active learning throughout the school day. Making sure that they're eating a breakfast, they're having snacks and lunch throughout the day just to sustain their energy. It would be helpful if you could make a visual schedule. You could even reach out to teachers. I know a lot of teachers that I work with have created visual schedules and have sent them home so that students can track their days so that they become, self-learners and self-starters. I would say if it's possible, I know it's not possible for every family, but to have a designated workspace. I know for myself, I have a designated workspace. So when I'm downstairs in the basement, that is where I work. And once I go upstairs, it's shut off. So our kids need to have that same release from school at some point. Like when we were in the building, they could be in the building and then they got to go home. They were dismissed. So we need to be able to kind of separate school and home in that way. It would be nice to implement maybe a reward system for a child who doesn't have that motivation at home to get work done. And just building in those breaks. I know teachers build in movement breaks for students, but also giving them a break after school if they're expected to do work asynchronously. Let them have a 10, 15-minute electronic free break, and then they can get into some homework or other activities. And I would always say consult with teachers for other ideas.
That's
Very
great, Desirae. Awesome,
Yeah.
awesome ideas.
And I'm going to add on to that last thing that Desirae was just talking about with the brain breaks, which teachers, are building in, but also just to really encourage your students. There's so much brain research about the physical movement and being ready for learning. And so actually getting up and moving during those times of breaks will actually help them engage in learning much better. And so sometimes it's counterintuitive because, they're like, oh, I'm going to take a break and I'm just going to sit here and do something, but really encouraging them to get up and out. And if more than one of your students has a break at the same time, maybe they can go walk around the block together and just really getting that physical activity in. And they will immediately be more engaged just because the brain is now in a different state.
Excellent.
Excellent, Jennifer. Thank you. How about you, Crystal?
Yeah, so I just wanted to add in, although I don't have kids at home, so I don't have that much experience with virtual learning, the library actually has a great resource because we recently had a panel where 4 of our librarians who had extensive experience in homeschooling, they all had homeschooled their kids for years, spoke to this question, and they were able to give their tips for homeschooling, and that is on our YouTube page. We also talk a little bit about the difference between homeschooling versus virtual learning, but I think these tips could very much apply to both. So I highly recommend.
That's great.
Very
So
good.
I'm going to recommend to everyone who's attending here today to click on the chat button, which is on the bottom of your screen, right in the middle. Looks like a little bubble, like a cartoon bubble. And you're going to see where we put all kinds of resources from BCPS and Parent University. That's all there, live links, and information that Crystal was just talking about from the library. So continue to watch that, and then also put your own questions in. that we'll get to a little bit later. So thank you very much. Okay, so our second question is for Jennifer. Some parents are starting to see changes in their child's view on school. Many students who always loved school are now saying school is boring. What can we do to bring back love of learning?
Yeah, so great question. And you know, it's a multifaceted question. And certainly during this time, we've found that some students have connected more with school and learning, and they're thriving. And we found some students that have not connected as much, and you know exactly what you're asking. And so just remembering that there's also this range of responses for students experiencing learning. But one thing that I am constantly thinking about is this idea of curiosity. And, you know, how do we, you know, help students become learners of their own? So there's, you know, sometimes we even call it in-school learning and out-of-school learning, but the reality is once students can really be curious about different things, it's really going to stoke their love of learning for, you know, a lifetime. And so one thing as that we can do at home with our kids is to really help them think about how can they formulate their own questions with things that they're learning. One thing that we like to do is at dinner time talk about you know, what happened in school today. Right now you kind of have an advantage because you can see what's happening in school, but to talk about those. So for example, in science, if they're talking about weather, it's a great chance to kind of talk about, okay, well, what about this weather and what happens if this happens? And then, you know, what can we learn about weather together? And, you know, whether, or if they're learning about, you know, nutrition and health. And so, you know, coming up with these ideas together as a family and then going further with them. And so then when they go to class the next day, we've piqued their interest. And so this is one thing that you can do. Plus, it just gives you a really great opportunity to talk to your kids more about what they're learning in school, but also prime them for learning the next day, because now they're thinking about, I wonder when a weather natural disaster happens, you know, what is our city's response to it? They're able to really think about it on different levels. And so I would just say that, you know, that would be one potential way that you could foster that love of learning. And this is also a great time to do passion projects. So the library is still open to pick up books. So you can reserve some books, you can pick them up. So they can pick, you know, they can say, hey, I've been learning about this and I want to know more. Well, you know, definitely give them that opportunity to do some passion projects and some, you know, learning on their own. And so, you know, those are just a few things to keep in mind.
And I realize I've been ripping off our participants by not saying to the entire panel, after we've asked the question, please contribute anything else that you think would be really helpful to share.
I wanted to add to Jen's that if for parents who might not be able to be right next to their child hearing what they're learning, that I noticed on the ELA website that you can still get what's going on in each grade level. So the parents can read about what their children are learning and then even still bring the conversation to the table that way too.
Absolutely. Such a great idea.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Thank you so much. So I'm going to address this to Desirae, but again, after her, of course, everyone. The question is, I have two children who are having two totally different experiences as they learn remotely. My introverted high schooler is loving the online experience. My extroverted middle schooler is not. The difference in their experiences and their disagreement between each other about how school is great/terrible is causing friction in our family. Help.
I think that kind of piggybacks what Jen was talking about as well, about some students are thriving in this environment and some students aren't. So I would say the first thing to recognize is that everybody is different and we're all going to react to the same situation in different ways based on a number of different factors. But since the one student is an introvert, they would thrive in a space where contact is limited, so there's less pressure to be social. The other student is an extrovert, so they thrive in areas where socialization and being with others is great. So just to acknowledge those differences to each of them so that they both feel understood would be a great first step. You could also talk to them about these differences one-on-one to help them better understand the perspective of the other student, and also give them some relatable examples, which could include you. You could also state what you wish would happen moving forward. And I would also suggest finding activities or other areas of interest for the student who is extroverted.
Great.
Good.
Very good. It's hard when you disagree about something as basic about how we
Yeah.
feel about school.
And I bet they have books at the library that mom or dad could read about the introvert and the extrovert, because I have that in my house. And I read about it. I learned a lot.
Absolutely. Right. And the quiet one's not always the introvert. And it's all about where you get your strength back.
Or it's very hard for the extrovert to understand the introvert. So that helps.
That is true. That's true. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay. So this is, again, for Jennifer. How should I navigate through the asynchronous day? Should I stick to the same schedule of school hours, even though the accountability and structure is different than other school days of the week?
So this is actually a great part of having school differently, because I do try to focus on the things that we can be positive about, which is you can tailor it. So we just talked about in the last question about kids being different and needing different things. And so when I actually think about my two sons, one of them, I would need to keep them on a schedule from start to finish. And this is kind of how we're doing our day, because it would really derail him to let him do different things and then like the next day have to get back into a routine again, especially right dab in the middle of the week. However, my other son is going to thrive from having choices. So let's make a list of everything that we need to get done today. Maybe I have to meet with my teacher. Maybe I've been assigned to a small group. Maybe I want to go to office hours, but listing everything that needs to be done and then helping them develop that skill of how do I put my schedule together? How would this look? Do I know the ideal time? My son doesn't learn very well from 8 to 10. I mean, and so now on this particular day, I can shift his learning back when he's really alert and ready to learn. So, I think that this is one of those things that I think that there's not a wrong answer. I think that you want to think about your kids and what's going to work best for you in your situation. There's merits to keeping the schedule the same and also giving some autonomy to learn in a way where students are able to have some choice and voice in creating their own schedule of learning for that day.
Excellent. Thank you. Anybody else have any thoughts about that? The asynchronous day, love it, hate it?
I love that you said choice and voice. I just love that. That's great.
Excellent. That's awesome. Okay, so this next one is for Crystal and for Sue. What is the best way to help students connect with their friends in this digital environment?
So I will say that the library is trying to offer a lot of fun and social programs for that out of school time. I know it's hard because the kids have been on Zoom all day. So a lot of times the last thing a family might want to do is log into Zoom and do another meeting. But we do have some fun and engaging things. For example, we have a program every Wednesday morning called Sight Words Sam. And that's for kids who are learning how to read by using sight words. And there's a lot of regular kids who attend that program. They have a lot of fun. They can see each other. They're getting to know each other. They're socializing that way. There's also a program for kids who are practicing their read aloud skills, and that's called Pause to Read. That was something that we were doing in the branches in person, but now the kids are reading to the dogs on Zoom, and our volunteers are super nice and their dogs are very well behaved, and they have them sitting in front of the Zoom camera. It's actually really fun. And then another program that we have is a kids coding club. So that's for older elementary age kids who really have an interest in STEM and computer science. And we lead them through a series of coding games. Same thing, it's educational, but it's still social and fun. They can see each other and talk to each other. And then finally, I wanted to let you guys know that we have a program that's currently in the works. We're calling it Virtual Recess. And it's that same missing piece that we've been hearing from a lot of our customers, which is the opportunity for kids to talk to each other, and more importantly, for them to be able to talk to each other about the things that they love. So some of the topics that came up with us were things like Lego, Minecraft, Among Us, Animal Crossing. So we have some librarians who have knowledge in those topics, and we're going to host some Zoom meetings where we can get kids together to just talk and interact with one another. Later, I think at the end of this, we're going to share our contact information. So since that program is in the works, if you have any suggestions for topics that we can cover, I think for this, we're going to have a different theme every week. So just let us know.
Oh my gosh. I love that virtual recess. That's a great idea. BCPL is so awesome. So I would just like to share that if your school has any social virtual events, make sure you try to attend them. I think some of our schools are doing that type of thing. And then I would also think about or consider arranging a meetup date where you can meet somewhere safely outside and maybe still wear the mask, maybe a park or an ice skating rink or anything like that. I do understand, though, from some of the students that are in magnet schools that that's harder because they live farther from their school. But as a parent, maybe you can talk to your student about a way that you could arrange for them to meet one of their magnet friends somewhere outside. And then if just to really let them be a little bit on social media. Maybe you can time it in the meeting after they're off of their school computer. But we could also consider writing an old-fashioned letter, which might help them with their writing skills. So, and eventually it will get there, even though the post office is still catching up. So I think, those are ways that we can, and really just go outside and play in the neighborhood with any neighborhood children that are around.
That's great. Those are all really, really good suggestions. If you're watching the chat, you'll see that we put a link to the library resources that Crystal was talking about there. And you can see those events that she was talking about. And looking for questions, we're getting a couple. But if you're saving them for the end, that's fine too. We might answer your question in our time together. So that's fine. Don't be shy. Great. So the next question is for Desirae. We've heard some families talk about their child repeating this same grade next year. What are your thoughts about that? And I'd like to hear from everybody about that. I mean, that's a really important question.
I would say my first thought would be what data has been gathered and what supports have been put in place to support retaining that student. I would suggest that the parent reach out to the administration for clarification surrounding retention in their specific district. Ultimately, retaining a student is a team decision. So I know from my experience that most educators strongly suggest that students are only retained one time if absolutely necessary. So I would just piggyback and go ahead and talk and reach out to those administrators, talk and have those conversations with teachers, because what we don't want to do throughout this process is put more harm on the student moving forward.
Great.
I would add to that to also look for community resources that could support the skill your child needs help in. I know like Towson University has a reading program, and there's a lot of them in the area or maybe in your community where you can get some additional help. And I know BCPS, we often have summer programs where we work with our children too, and I'm sure that we're going to try our best to do that this year also. So best to talk to the child's teacher about all those programs.
Yeah, and Sue, that was perfect because I was about to talk about the fact that we do have that BCPS learning hike, where we're able to provide some additional support, and so I agree with everything that's been said. And then I would just add to the fact that we have to remember that we're doing learning in the midst of a pandemic, so we're all in the exact same place, and so recognizing that. Teachers are some of the most amazing humans ever, that they are going to be able to take where your child comes in next year and take them where they need to go. And I think that, like Sue said, that there's some other, enrichment opportunities out there. You've heard some amazing opportunities from our partner with BCPL, and then BCPS, of course, offers the summer program. So, you could look at some different things that you can do to supplement, but that, really thinking is retention the best idea, or really trusting that we know, that this year has been very challenging, but we're prepared to meet that challenge as our kids come to us next year to get them where they need to go. And so I would just offer that also as a suggestion.
Very good.
That's great. Very, very good suggestions, and something that's a pretty serious decision that really needs some thought and some processing and teamwork with the school to make a decision like that. Crystal and Sue, let's talk about homework. What resources do we have to help students and families with homework?
Crystal, let me go first because I know you'll be longer.
Go ahead.
But I want to say that if your child is struggling with homework or if it's a battle every night, just remember that your relationship is more important. Your relationship with your child is way more important than completing homework. So first, check with your child's teacher and get some strategies from the teacher on what you can do to support your child during homework time. And then I would go back to the websites such as ELA's website where you can find resources to support that skill. And then unfortunately we had a ransom attack that wiped out 8 years of my work on Parent University, but we will bring it back soon. But you can find some resources on our family engagement page, which includes our newsletter that you can sign up for. And we have so many resources every other week in that newsletter. So continue to check that, and the family engagement, which Joan's going to put the link, we're going to show you, the family engagement website. Rest is yours, Crystal.
Thanks, Sue. So I'll go ahead and say that the public library has always offered databases for students in the community for homework help, but a couple of new databases that we have, we renewed a subscription with Gale in Context, which is just kind of a general research database. One thing that's really cool about it is there's actually 3 separate databases for elementary, middle, and high school. So you can go to the one that has the sources that are most relevant to you. And it also includes a lot of primary sources. And I know during my time as a librarian, when I did a chat service, there was a lot of kids who were learning how to research. And one of the main parts of learning how to research is differentiating between primary and secondary resources and where you can find primary resources. Gale in Context is a great place to find primary resources if your child is in middle school. I would say is maybe around the age when you start learning about that, and maybe high school as well. Another great resource for primary resources is ProQuest. That's actually a database that we've had for a while, but it's one that I refer to students all the time, especially if they're doing a history project, because it has a lot of digitized versions of newspaper articles from a long time ago. I think some of the oldest ones are from the 1800s or something like that. So we've definitely utilized that a lot. And then finally, there's a database called BrainFuse, which some of you may have heard of, but it's a live chat service to talk to a tutor online. And I'm sure that tutoring is kind of a difficult thing to come by these days, because I know when the library was open to the public, it was a meeting space for a lot of teachers and students or tutors and the people that they were helping. And unfortunately, we can't offer that space right now, but the BrainFuse is a great way to talk to someone, and they will help out pretty much all ages, kindergarten all the way up to college age, depending on what you need help with. And you can access them 7 days a week from 2 p.m. to midnight. So it's kind of like those peak homework hours, kind of outside of regular school hours, that you can utilize them. The other thing that I wanted to mention that's also something new that we've recently done is a lot of times people know that the databases are there, but not necessarily how to use them. So our librarians filmed a series of video tutorials for some of these databases. So if you go to our YouTube page, and I think there's also a link to a playlist so that you can see all of the database videos in one place. But we did these tutorials where we're screen sharing and we're kind of showing you, here's where you click, here's how you search. So I think that could be helpful as well.
Yeah, and we put that link to the playlist on YouTube in the chat.
Yeah,
so that's all there. It's all there for you. And again, sometimes I feel like we're drinking out of a fire hose here. We get a lot of information.
Yeah.
So don't panic. We're gonna send that information to you in a PDF tomorrow to the email that you use to register. So you'll have all that information available to you. That's awesome. I've always loved my library, but I love my library.
Me too.
Okay, so Jennifer, we have a question for you. As I'm in my house with my child during class, I often hear or see situations where my child is struggling. How do I decide when to intervene then and when to let the child and teacher work the problem out? Is jumping in helicoptering or assisting and advocating?
So great question. So, learning is so different this year. And so we like to say when we're talking about, working with students that, we're guests in their home, and as, parents are observing instruction that, they're guests in the classroom. And so, I would think I would kind of visualize, even though like the screen and the teacher and everything is right there, but to think about like, what would I do if I was in the classroom, like on an open house day? Like, would I jump in right now? And just really think about that, because and I'm going to talk a minute about advocacy with kids, but I would also say that that's a learning time for all of the students in that class. And so, if there's something that comes up that you feel like you need to address with a teacher, thinking about emailing or contacting that teacher after that learning time so that the other students that are in that class can also participate in that learning experience. But also as a parent, and, my kids are a little bit older, so they tell me all kinds of things, like when I'm embarrassing them, that we don't want to set up a situation where we embarrass our students, in that situation when we might be able to do it privately. But I think the bigger issue, all of that aside, I think the bigger issue is that we're denying our kids that opportunity to learn advocacy skills on their own and to figure out how to problem solve and how to work it. Now, what our job can be, with our students is to really help them think through it, to coach them. How do you want to approach this? Do you want to email the teacher? Do you want to do you want to go to their office hours? Maybe it's something they don't even want to address. Maybe we thought as a parent or guardian that it was a big deal, but maybe it wasn't a big deal to the child. And so I actually, not that I liked when my kids struggled, but I liked it in the sense of I got a chance to coach them, because that's a skill that they will take with them the rest of their life. Like when I'm struggling, or when I feel like something was unjust, or when I feel like I didn't get what I needed, how do I advocate for that? And so your role as parents and guardians are crucial to really think about, how can I help my child become the best advocate for themselves as they progress through not just school, but life. And so I would definitely err on the side of thinking about debriefing later with your child and how you could move that situation forward and helping them think it through and being a thought partner for them.
Great advice.
Absolutely. Anyone else on the team have anything else to share? That was an excellent answer.
Yeah. I think that was very good. Having raised 3 boys that are men now, that was very good advice, Jen.
Absolutely. Oh, love it. So our last question of our scheduled questions before we get to our participants' questions, and this is for everybody. Are there any programs or services that your organization or school is providing that parents can reach out to you for additional information? I mean, if I was going to ask the question, yikes, I need help, where would you encourage families to start to reach out for help?
Definitely with their teacher, their student's teacher. And then if they don't get anywhere there, you can try your administrator. But I'll just share a few of our sites, and you guys might have some. If you just want some general information, I mentioned the Family and Community Engagement website, and we'll put the link in. And you go to the Student Parent tab at the top of our new website, and you'll get Parent University, and that's where you'll see like schedule of events like tonight's event. But you'll also see an info center that we put up, and that actually has the new returning plan there, and we've really broken it down by topic and then what page, because that plan is huge. So you can look for the topic you're interested in and then go right to that page in the plan. And then once again, the parent, the FaceTime newsletter, where you can get a lot of information. And then finally for your students, and I don't know if Desirae might even want to touch on this, is the virtual calming room. There's so many great resources in there for our children to go visit and ourselves to visit, just to help us relax and to get great resources there. Do you want to touch on that, Desirae?
Sure. So Baltimore County has come up with the virtual calming room. It's a lot of different resources where we talk about SEL components and just how to get students back to a calmer space. So that's a great resource. I know other school counselors, including myself, we've come up with our own virtual calming rooms.
Oh.
Yes, your school counselor, social worker, school psychologist are all great people to reach out to. If you're experiencing any difficulties, we're always here to help. I did want to plug one more resource, and this is just for Marylanders in general. If you're having or going through a stressful situation during this time and you want to talk to a social worker yourself, you can always go on to Pro Bono Counseling, and I'll put the link in the chat as well. If you just want to talk to someone, they're available Monday through Friday from 10 to 6.
And the link for the virtual calming room, I dropped into the chat a little bit earlier, so you'll see that there. And then just to kind of tie in what both Sue and Desirae said is, definitely the teacher is there for you. Counselors are amazing resources you can reach out to in the administration. And so just realizing that you have a team of people that are there because they want your child to be successful, and just knowing that you have that's what they're there for, and they want your child to be successful. And so there's lots of layers that you have for support, and so utilizing all of those resources.
So a couple things that I'll add about the library. We are going to offer the email address of our youth services department, which is the department that I work for. So like I was saying, if you have any suggestions for virtual programs that you think would be fun, or needs that you feel like need to be filled by the library, that's definitely something that you can contact that email address for. I also included the link for our email question service, which is called LibAnswers. And it's a form that you fill out on our website, but you'll get emailed back by like an actual in-person librarian, and they'll be able to help you out if you have any questions about any of our library services, your account, like your library card account, your kids' accounts. And then another thing that I just wanted to bring up is that the general LibAnswers email service, you can also use that for questions that you might have or things that you might need help with, whether it's finding resources for a local food pantry, or you need help filling out a job application online, or you don't know who the correct person is to contact for unemployment benefits. I think that there are a lot of people who might not be very tech savvy and not as good at researching, and it's okay to ask the library to help you research these things and help you find the right people to contact. And it's also really important to make sure that as a parent, you're helping yourself, because I think that's really the best way to help your kids is to help yourself first. Just like the self-care I was saying at the beginning. So know that although I did share a lot of resources today for students and helping them with their virtual learning, there's also plenty of resources that the library offers for adults and parents as well.
That's great. And I wanted to add to that too, that you can always call 211 also, and they will help you with the resources that are right in your community.
Right. And I think that's true. What do they say on the airplane? Adjust your own oxygen mask first before helping your partner, because when we're out of steam, we can't be of help to the people that we love and who need us. So it's important for us to take care of ourselves too.
Yeah.
So thank you all so much for that. So we've had some really interesting questions, and I'm going to share those with you now, and then I'm just going to have people answer as they will. So our participant said that that they suspect that most people are not able to sit right next to their children during school. And so for instance, was her fourth grader was starting a math test and ran into our participant's office where they were holding a really big meeting saying they couldn't get their Wi-Fi to work properly for her math test. And so that obviously took a lot of scrambling, and it was challenging. So the question, they had to move to different locations to get everything set up. So the question is, what advice do you have for parents who are working during the whole school day, leading meetings, teaching classes, when their children run into problems that make it impossible for them to get their work done?
So I can start out. So, the Wi-Fi goes out on me too also when I'm in an important meeting or whatever. I would say that as you start to see maybe some common issues, developing together some troubleshooting guides. So like there's things that I know to do now, like, if the first thing I do is I, go to my Wi-Fi connection, and maybe the next thing I do is maybe I have to reset the router, but like, coming up with like some like, okay, so if this happens, what are the steps that I take? And so that they can try to independently troubleshoot some of those things on their own. And I know the first time they won't be able to do it, but as you start to see a repetition of certain issues, which I think the Wi-Fi one is a big one, but also what should they do? So like beyond even like what you're doing in the Wi-Fi, notifying the teacher, like, should they go to the group chat? Did the teacher say that they were going to stay in one room while the kids were taking the test, so that because that is a really panic inducing incident. Like if you're about to take your math test and then you can't get on and you think you're not going to finish, right?
Yeah.
So thinking about all of those things that they can do. And then also, do you have to have some kind of system where, it's a good time for them to talk to you versus not talk to you? Like if you're, leading a meeting, is there a way that you can have a system for communication when it's good for them to get help from you versus not? And so I think that would be some things that I would think about, is like how can we work through some of these things that are challenges together, and really thinking about, how they can do some of those on their own.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing that I also kind of want to jump in, the library is actually offering Wi-Fi hotspots for loan that you can pick up via our curbside pickup. So I really liked what Jennifer was saying about kind of having a plan in place to triage the situation. And I think part of that is maybe thinking preventative measures. So if you wanted to kind of have that extra safety net, you could come to the library and get a Wi-Fi hotspot, and then have, yourself or your child connect to it for their important thing they have to do.
Yeah, that's excellent.
Amazing idea. Love it.
Yeah, very good.
Well, and the word grace that was used before too, that I think
Yes.
we all know that there are challenges in this system and setup, and I would imagine most teachers would understand that these things happen, and
Yeah.
I guess
Yeah.
I'm not the professional you are, but I've raised kids too, and I think part of it is giving the child permission to say it's going to be okay, and
Right.
we're going to work it
Yes.
out and
Right.
problem solve it,
100%.
and
Yeah.
Take that deep breath. And
Yeah.
I follow teachers in a group, and believe me, they're having a lot of their own tech problems,
Yes.
so they understand.
Right. That's awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And thank you for the question. Here's another question. Are there ways to keep my middle schooler from getting distracted and navigating away from his synchronous class to other websites on his BCPS device? I would imagine this is a pretty common question.
I think it goes back to that engaging question a little bit. That sounds like your curiosity word, Jen. That's a curious student.
Right. I know. Wow. So tricky, right? So I think that not just middle schoolers, I think high schoolers, adults struggle with this multitasking and being pulled away from things. And I know this isn't answering the question directly, but just to say, like, when I started this new year, one of the things that I do is I have blocks of time now where I turn my email off, even if it's just for an hour and a half. Because what I was finding was, I would start on something and an email would come through and I'm like, oh, that's important. And I was bouncing all over the place. And so that has helped tremendously. And like I said, it's not an hour and a half is not that long. And there's nothing that can't wait for an hour and a half, but I kind of had to give myself that permission to say, I'm not going to be signed into my email, and I'm going to be present in this moment with this project.
Yeah.
And so, maybe thinking about how you can structure the length of the time of the class, so that and because they are giving frequent breaks, so like during break time I'm going to go to these sites and do these things, but during my class time I'm going to be in that moment. And I know Desirae, and she's probably going to add in now, but she talked a little bit about rewards, and I think that sometimes like figuring out what those rewards are, in terms of if it's not intrinsically motivating right now, how can we help with some extrinsic motivation to help them get where they need to be, which is being fully present in class during that time.
Yeah, I definitely was going to go with the reward system. If I see that the student or the child is attuned and into class for this amount of time, then I can give them that break or that release at the end of the day to fulfill that need that they were trying to fulfill before. You could also implement, honestly, the discipline aspect of it. Like seeing that you're on this site, now you lose some of those privileges so that they are motivated to do what they need to do while they're online.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to ask, do you guys think, I'm not sure if this is a good idea or not, but to have like a doodle pad or something, so at least they're doing something with their hands while they're listening to the teacher, as opposed to going to another site?
So I think it depends on the student, and I'll give an example with my son, who was almost too curious, and like would have so many questions, like that he got to the point where he was interrupting the teachers, or like other students weren't asking questions, and so we actually had given him Post-it notes, and we're like, write your questions down. And, when the teacher says, okay, it's time for questions, see what you can get through. You're not going to get through all of them. And then we let him take the questions to us at dinner time, and we would discuss the questions as a family.
Good.
And that worked for him because he did have a lot of questions, right? So I think your question is, it could work for some kids, that having that doodle pad or something to do, for some kids having something to fidget with, just one of those squishy balls.
Oh, yeah.
There's different things that, you can do to kind of stay present in the moment without going to another site. And so I think, thinking about, your specific child and what strategies would work for them, in that moment. So that could be a good strategy. It might not work for every student, but it could be for some.
That's great. That's great. And we have a follow-up question about the hotspot, Crystal. So
sure.
The question is, they can use the hotspot even if they're far away from the library location?
Yes. So you check it out, you take it home. I can't remember what the loan period is for, but you take it home and you keep it for at least a couple weeks.
Yeah, I think it's
Okay.
3.
I guess that was and I have the same question. I'm not quite sure how a hotspot works.
Yeah, so previously we would actually use them if we went and did outreach. So sometimes there would be different like festivals or events, and they would ask for the library to have a table there, in person, back when we could all gather together and do this sort of
Back
thing.
in the before times, yes.
Right, exactly. And a lot of times it would be outdoors. They can't always promise a secure internet connection. So we would have the hotspot there to connect to the computer. And we also still offer our bookmobile service. So we're not doing community stops anymore, but we're going to daycares and dropping off books right now. So if you know anybody who runs a daycare and needs a service, you can certainly contact us. But that is what they would use to connect to the internet to check out books for kids.
Perfect. That's awesome. What a great service. Thank you.
Sure.
So this might be our last question today. And it's this. My kids are completely overwhelmed by the amount of work they're assigned. Do you have any suggestions on how to help them? They are each missing many assignments and just feel discouraged by everything.
I will just start off by saying they're not alone. And we recently had some focus groups with students who also had the same struggles. So some people in the county were there to talk with them and listen to them and take the message back. So maybe there'll be some adjustments. I can't say, but I can say that your children are not alone in feeling that way. I would also turn to the teacher again and make sure you and they are talking to their teacher to let them know and see what they can do, and be on Schoology and checking Schoology often. Sometimes they think they're behind, but the teacher hasn't gotten to it yet, or put the grade in. So that could be the case too.
So adding to that, absolutely, please communicate with the teacher to make a plan. Again, plugging for the counselor, the counselor would also be a great support. I would reach out to the teacher first, but the counselor also would be really helpful because I think that communication is so very important. And what's nice is, it's not exactly answering your question, but we're getting close to the end of the quarter, which means that we're kind of starting over. And so sometimes just kind of giving that hope, because sometimes when you just get so buried, it becomes overwhelming and you don't know how to break it down or if there's anything you can possibly do, which is why talking to the teacher is important. But also focusing on that we're about to have a new quarter and a do-over, right? No assignments have been assigned yet. It's
Yeah.
brand new.
Right.
Uh-oh.
Oh,
Might
I think
need that
Jennifer's
hotspot.
freezing up a little bit. Yeah.
She needs you, Crystal.
I know.
It'll come back. I have faith.
Yeah.
Desirae,
Take a
do you
deep breath.
see that discouragement that not just students are feeling, but families are feeling too?
Absolutely. Everybody has so much on their plates right now, and I've just been so amazed with how flexible teachers are with their requirements for assignments. So like Sue said and like Jennifer said, definitely reach out to teachers. They are being extremely flexible with what they are expecting students to do and complete. I would also say, yes, reach out to the school counselors because I know for myself, I'm pushing in and I'm helping students complete assignments as well. So we are all here and we're in this together, and we definitely do want to help. And Jen was saying, moving forward and putting some of those things in the past, although some teachers are offering students opportunities to get some of that work completed. But just maybe even having a to-do list. Today, I'm going to work on one assignment so that it doesn't start to pile up. I know for some students, I'm implementing that as well. And completing calendars with them, like on this day, I'm going to complete this assignment. This is how long I'm going to spend on that assignment. So letting them know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel after they finish some of those assignments.
So this was more of a statement in the
Good
chat,
advice.
but I think it could be a question. Is it appropriate to ask for extended time for submission of work assignments? I mean, is that something that you could talk to a teacher about?
Absolutely. I don't
Yeah.
see why there wouldn't be
Yeah.
a reason to ask them.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think you should ask.
Mhm.
And sorry, so talking about technology issues, my internet dropped, so I'm actually
We're so
using my
happy you're
phone as a
back.
hotspot, right?
I'm hearing your
But I know. But I wanted to add on to what Desirae was saying because I was getting ready to go to the task list and checklist and all that. And so you might have said this, but just to say, as you complete something, also, rewarding, in terms of doing something fun, because that's going to keep you motivated. If you think you have 52 things to do before you can have some fun, it's going to, so just really remembering that, that's how some of the intrinsic motivation gets built, is that we build in some of those rewards along the way. And so just remembering that, they're kids and that they need to have some self-care and breaks also.
Very
Awesome.
good.
Yeah, I personally, even now, I love me a checklist. There's something very
Yeah.
satisfying about
Yes.
checking that off.
I've gotten so many tips tonight from you guys.
I know, this is
I think
great.
it's been amazing.
So again, just to recap for our participants, we are going to be reaching out, and I'm going to share my screen at this point just for a second. And hopefully put on our ending slide. I apologize. And just to sort of finish up here, to say thank you. Thank you so much for being with us, for sharing your knowledge, for partnering with us to really address what is a really important issue. And as we said, we have got to support our families, our caregivers, our guardians, our parents, because they're the ones that are taking care of our kids. And so we just really appreciate this opportunity to do that. So I thank you, Crystal and Sue and Jennifer and Desirae for being with us tonight. I really appreciate it.